There are moments in life when you begin to see the quiet truth about people, the kind of truth that isn't spoken aloud but revealed in their absence. You start to realize that what you gave to them, no one else ever will. That your presence, your essence, your way of loving, thinking, encouraging, even disagreeing, carried something unique, something unrepeatable. People tend to think that everyone is replaceable, that they can lose you, find another, and the rhythm of life will resume as if nothing happened. But that's a lie. A lie people tell themselves to soften the blow of loss. The truth is, when you leave, something irreplaceable departs with you. And though they might not understand it immediately, time has a way of showing them that they'll never find another you, and that realization becomes their curse forever. We underestimate the depth of our individuality. We live in a world obsessed with sameness, with trends, with blending in. People try to fit into molds, adopt the language of the crowd, the opinions of the majority, and the aesthetics of the moment. But beneath that conformity, there remains something ancient, sacred, and entirely your own. You are a pattern that has never existed before in the vast timeline of human history. The way you interpret pain, the tone of your laughter, the gentleness of your heart, the principles you refuse to abandon, all of these form a constellation that can't be duplicated. And when someone loses you, they lose access to that constellation. They may try to find its reflection in another, but reflections are just distortions of the real thing. The tragedy is they will chase the echo of your presence without ever hearing the true sound of it again. People often don't value what's in front of them until it's gone. That's one of the oldest lessons in human nature. Familiarity breeds blindness. When someone sees you every day, when they hear your voice often, when they grow accustomed to your support, your kindness, your understanding, they start to take it as a given. They confuse consistency with permanence. But you were never permanent. You were a gift, a rare alignment of time, circumstance, and soul. You entered their life not by accident, but as a moment of grace, an opportunity to grow, to become better, to learn what true connection feels like. And if they squandered that, if they took your patience for weakness or your loyalty for granted, then they bear the burden of that loss. Because life has a way of teaching through absence what presence failed to reveal. Every person you meet leaves a psychological imprint. The deeper the relationship, the more profound the impression. You can't just erase that. You can distract yourself. You can move on physically. You can even convince yourself that you're healed, but the unconscious remembers. It keeps a record of authenticity, of emotional truth, of energy exchanged. And when they encounter others, they will compare, even unconsciously. The laughter will feel different, the silence less comfortable, the conversations less meaningful. The new will never measure up to what was real. And that's the quiet curse that follows them, not because you were perfect, but because you were real in a world that teaches people to settle for imitation. You see, when someone treats you as replaceable, they expose their own blindness, not your lack of value. They fail to see the extraordinary in the ordinary moments you shared. They fail to recognize how your words shaped their thoughts, how your belief in them strengthened their will, how your love made them feel seen in ways they hadn't before. And it's only when they stand in the emptiness of your absence that the realization begins to dawn slowly, painfully, that the energy you carried was singular, that no one else brings that same mix of tenderness and fire, of depth and light, of chaos and calm. You cannot recreate that combination. You cannot synthesize it. It's one of a kind, and it's gone. The truth is, many people are spiritually asleep. They live life on autopilot, blind to the treasure in front of them until it slips through their fingers. They assume love is endless, attention is infinite, and people will always wait. But nothing in this world stays still. Life moves, time shifts, people grow, and sometimes growth means realizing that you no longer belong where you were once tolerated. Sometimes you have to walk away, not to punish, but to preserve the parts of you that others failed to value. And when you do, something remarkable happens. You reclaim your power. Because the same energy they dismissed becomes the very thing they can never replace. And that's what they'll remember. The small details. the subtle moments, the times you listened without judgment, the encouragement you offered when no one else believed in them, the way your presence made chaos feel less chaotic, the warmth in your silence, the courage in your truth. They'll try to find that again. They'll chase it in new faces, new conversations, new bodies. But every time they do, they'll be haunted by the memory of what was authentic. They'll see shades of you in others, but never the full spectrum. And that's the quiet torment. They'll keep searching for something that exists only in the memory of you. But here's the thing. Your value doesn't increase because they finally recognize it. It was always there. Their inability to see it doesn't mean it was hidden. It means their perception was clouded. You cannot teach someone to see the rare if their mind is conditioned to seek the common. You cannot make someone appreciate gold if they've been taught to settle for glitter. It's not your job to convince anyone of your worth. It's your responsibility to embody it, to live as the authentic expression of who you are, even when others misunderstand it. Because when you stand in that truth, when you walk away from what diminishes you, you don't lose anything. You create space for alignment, for peace, for people who can see you clearly. The idea that you're irreplaceable isn't arrogance, it's recognition of individuality. Think about it. No two fingerprints are the same. No two voices resonate identically. No two souls carry the same configuration of pain, passion, and purpose. That means every relationship, every connection is a once-in-history event. And when it ends, something eternal closes. You can't replicate it, not exactly. That's why grief hurts so much. It's not just the loss of a person, it's the loss of an entire world that existed between you. So when they lose you, they lose a world. They lose a version of themselves that only existed in your presence. And that's why the absence cuts so deep. It's not just about missing you. It's about missing who they were when they were with you. People often try to move on by replacing, but true connections don't dissolve through substitution. You can find someone new, but you can't find the same resonance. You can't recreate a soul frequency. And so they'll go through the motions, convincing themselves that it's fine, that they've moved on, that they've found better, but every now and then a song, a scent, a memory will surface and it will remind them. The ache will return. The unspoken recognition will whisper, "You'll never find another like that." And that whisper will follow them, no matter how far they run. There's a lesson here for you too. Don't dim yourself to make others comfortable. Don't shrink to fit into spaces that cannot hold your fullness. The people who truly see you won't be intimidated by your light. They'll be inspired by it. And those who walk away weren't meant to stay because they weren't equipped to handle the magnitude of your soul. You can love deeply, give freely, and still be unappreciated. But that doesn't mean you were wrong to love. It means you were strong enough to risk vulnerability in a world that fears it. And that's not weakness, that's power. The kind of power that stays with people long after you're gone. It's easy to think that walking away is a sign of bitterness or pride, but often it's a sacred act of self-respect. When someone continually fails to see your worth, staying becomes self-betrayal. You owe it to yourself to step into spaces where your energy is met, not drained. And when you do that, you stop living in reaction to others' blindness. You start living in alignment with your own vision. That's where peace begins, not when others finally value you, but when you stop needing them to. And perhaps the most powerful truth of all is this: when you remove yourself from the lives of those who mistreated you, you give them the gift of consequence. You allow them to experience the absence that teaches more effectively than your presence ever could. You give them silence where there was once reassurance, distance where there was once closeness. And in that silence, they begin to hear the echoes of their own mistakes. They begin to realize that what they dismissed was the very thing they needed. That's the lesson life teaches the hard way. The people we take for granted often become the ghosts we can't forget. It's not revenge, it's reality. You don't have to wish them harm. Time will do the teaching. You don't have to prove them wrong. Life will show them. Because when you live authentically, when you keep growing, healing, and evolving, you become a mirror they can no longer face. You remind them of what they lost, what they overlooked, what they were too blind to nurture. And that reminder will follow them through every shallow connection they chase afterward. There is a certain peace that comes from knowing that your worth is not dependent on recognition. You are not valuable because someone else sees you. You are valuable because you exist, because you carry within you a spark that is uniquely yours. And that spark, once experienced, leaves an imprint that can't be erased. You don't need to prove your irreplaceability. Life itself will prove it for you. The ones who failed to see your light will one day find themselves standing in darkness, wondering how they ever mistook your glow for something ordinary. There's a mysterious kind of justice that life carries within it. It doesn't operate on your schedule. It doesn't announce itself. It moves quietly, like a tide returning to balance the shore after a storm. You might never see the moment when they realize what they lost. You might never hear the apology or the confession of regret. But deep down in places words can't reach, they'll feel it. The absence of your presence will haunt them in unexpected ways, through the hollowness of laughter that doesn't feel as warm, through the emptiness of conversations that never reach the same depth, through the quiet recognition that they traded something sacred for something shallow. That is the curse of those who fail to appreciate the genuine. They must live forever, knowing they once held gold, but chose gravel instead. You can't counterfeit authenticity. You can't replace depth with distraction. You can't substitute truth with convenience. People try, of course. They'll fill their days with noise, their nights with company, their hearts with denial. But denial can't erase memory. It can only delay it. And eventually, when the world grows still enough, when the distractions fade and the noise dies down, the truth comes back. They remember the steadiness of your voice when they were breaking, the way you spoke life into their hopelessness, the way your presence made them feel grounded, not just entertained. They'll remember that you cared when no one else did, that you stayed when others left, that you understood them when they didn't even understand themselves. And that remembrance burns because they'll realize they can't return to what they once destroyed. And yet, you must not wait for that realization. Your purpose was never to be their lesson. It was to live your truth, to embody what it means to love without losing yourself, to give without becoming empty, to walk away not in bitterness, but in wisdom. Because wisdom isn't born from victory. It's born from heartbreak, from betrayal, from learning the limits of your compassion and the boundaries of your worth. Every person who fails to see you clearly becomes part of your becoming. They carve depth into your character. They teach you to stop begging for acknowledgement and start standing in your own light. That's the real transformation, when you no longer chase validation, but instead radiate presence. You start to understand that your worth isn't something people give you, it's something you reveal through how you carry yourself. The world doesn't need more people trying to prove their value. It needs more people living as though they already know it. When you walk in that truth, you become magnetic. Not because you're trying to attract anyone, but because authenticity always attracts curiosity. The same people who once doubted you will start watching from a distance, trying to understand how you moved forward without their approval. They'll wonder why their absence didn't destroy you. They'll see your peace, your growth, your quiet confidence, and they'll feel the sting of what they could have shared but didn't protect. That sting will become their companion. And while they dwell in the shadow of what they lost, you must keep moving into the light of what you're becoming, because the worst thing you could ever do is pause your growth to watch someone else learn their lesson. Life is not about proving points, it's about walking in purpose. Let them sit with their regret while you build your peace. Let them replay memories while you write new ones. Let them search for your reflection in others while you reflect on how far you've come. That's how you win, not through revenge, but through evolution. There's something profoundly spiritual about realizing you're irreplaceable. It humbles you, but it also strengthens you. It reminds you that every interaction you have carries a sacred responsibility to bring your truth, your heart, your depth to the table. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. You don't need to please everyone. You just need to remain genuine. And when you do that, you create moments that time can't erase. That's why they'll never find another you, not because you were flawless, but because you were real in a world that worships performance. You see, most people wear masks. They curate themselves. They say what they think others want to hear. They hide their pain, conceal their vulnerability, and trade authenticity for acceptance. But you didn't. You showed up with your soul exposed. You spoke the truth even when it trembled. You cared deeply even when it hurt. You loved fully even when it wasn't returned. That's courage. And courage like that always leaves a mark, because those who encounter it see, even if only for a moment, what real humanity looks like. They glimpse the kind of love that transforms rather than entertains. And once they've seen that, nothing else feels quite the same. They'll try to replicate it. They'll look for your qualities in others, the kindness, the intensity, the way you made them feel seen. But every imitation will fall short, because love without authenticity is theater, and connection without honesty is illusion. You were not an illusion. You were the truth. You were the mirror that showed them who they could become. And when they turned away from that mirror, they didn't just lose you, they lost a version of themselves that only existed in your presence. That's the real curse. Because even if they find comfort in new arms, it will never recreate the soul-level recognition they once felt. That kind of recognition only happens once. And perhaps the hardest thing to accept is that your story with them was never meant to last forever. Some connections are designed to awaken, not to accompany. Some people are chapters, not conclusions. You may have been the spark that ignited their growth, the mirror that forced them to confront their own darkness. And when that purpose is fulfilled, the universe moves you onward. It hurts, yes, but that pain is the evidence that it mattered. It means you lived something real, something transformative. And that's what life is asking of you, not permanence, but presence. There's beauty in realizing that your energy is a rare frequency. Not everyone will resonate with it. Not everyone can handle it. Some will mistake your depth for intensity, your silence for indifference, your standards for pride. But those who are meant to walk with you will understand without explanation. They will meet you at your frequency instead of trying to pull you down to theirs. And when that happens, you'll see why the others had to leave. Their absence made room for alignment. Their blindness made space for someone with vision. That's not punishment, it's protection. So stop mourning those who couldn't see your value. They were simply unprepared for your magnitude. Stop trying to convince people to stay who were destined to go. You cannot save those committed to misunderstanding you. What you can do is honor yourself enough to let go with grace. Because letting go is not failure, it's faith. Faith that what's meant for you will recognize you. Faith that what's lost will be replaced with something greater, not in quantity but in quality. And faith that your uniqueness is not a curse to bear but a crown to wear. And as time passes, you'll look back and see the pattern. You'll realize that every person who left made you stronger. Every rejection refined your clarity. Every betrayal sharpened your discernment. You'll stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, what did this teach me about myself? That's when you begin to understand that life is not about what people take from you. It's about what you discover within yourself after they're gone. And when you discover that strength, when you start to live from it, your energy changes. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop explaining and start embodying. And those who once took you for granted will sense that shift even from afar. They'll notice the peace in your voice. They'll see the joy that no longer depends on them. They'll realize you became everything they once tried to diminish. And that realization will hurt, because it's one thing to lose someone, it's another to lose them while they become everything you once needed. That's the consequence of blindness, and that's their curse forever. You, however, must not let their regret define your peace. Don't carry the weight of their realization. You've already carried enough. Let time be their teacher and truth be your vindication. Keep walking, keep building, keep becoming, because your story doesn't end with loss, it begins there. Every great transformation begins with separation. The seed must break before it can grow. The caterpillar must dissolve before it can fly, and you had to lose them to find yourself again. That's the quiet miracle of heartbreak. It burns away illusion. It teaches you what was real and what was merely comfortable. It forces you to rebuild, not from desperation, but from authenticity. And when you rebuild from that place, your foundation becomes unshakable. You become grounded in who you are. You no longer need external validation because you've already found internal truth. And when you reach that place, you become untouchable, not because you're guarded, but because you're whole. And that wholeness, that peace, that quiet strength, that's what they'll never find again. Because they were drawn to your light, but they didn't protect it. They were nourished by your energy, but they didn't reciprocate it. They wanted your warmth without respecting your fire. And life does not reward that kind of imbalance, it corrects it. So now they must live with the echo of what they lost, while you live with the fullness of what you became. You were never just another person passing through their life. You were the mirror, the guide, the truth teller. You were the rare soul who saw beyond their surface and spoke to their potential. You offered them an experience of real connection. And real connection, once tasted, ruins you for the shallow. That's why they'll search endlessly. Because once you've known authenticity, pretense becomes unbearable. Once you've felt depth, surface level attention feels hollow. Once you've experienced soul, flesh alone is not enough. They'll keep chasing something that doesn't exist anymore, because it existed only between you and them, and that's their curse forever. They will try to recreate you in fragments, piecing together bits of personalities they meet along the way, hoping to construct something that feels familiar. They'll look for your compassion in one person, your intensity in another, your wisdom in someone else, but it will never come together the way it did with you, because you were not a collection of traits. You were a living, breathing paradox of complexity and softness, of power and patience, of mystery and understanding. You were a complete experience, a symphony that played only once. And no matter how many echoes they chase, the melody will never sound the same. The truth is, they didn't just lose someone, they lost the feeling of being truly known. And that kind of loss lingers long after the details of your face fade from memory. There will be nights when they lie awake, surrounded by all the things they thought mattered more, and they'll feel the hollowness where your presence used to be. The mind is clever, but the soul is honest. The soul doesn't forget the ones who touched it with sincerity. It will remind them. It will whisper your name in moments of silence. It will pull them back to the truth they denied, that they had something rare, and they let it go. And as time moves forward, that realization becomes heavier, because what once could have been healed with humility now becomes permanent with time. You can't undo neglect. You can't reverse blindness. You can't go back to what you didn't protect when you had it. Life doesn't work that way. You either cherish the rare when it arrives, or you spend years haunted by what you failed to value. And that's why walking away, though painful, is an act of liberation. It's not punishment, it's clarity. It's the recognition that your presence deserves reverence, not tolerance. You were never meant to be half-loved. You were never meant to exist as an option in someone's indecision. You were meant to be met with depth, with respect, with reciprocity. When that doesn't happen, the kindest thing you can do for your soul is to step away, because the moment you stop forcing yourself to be understood by those who are unwilling to listen, peace begins to grow where pain once lived. You start to see that your absence is not just a void in their life, it's a reminder of everything they could have had but didn't choose. And while they wander through the aftermath of their choices, you will evolve. You'll find strength you didn't know you possessed. You'll realize that the love you gave so freely to others was always meant to circle back and heal you. You'll discover that the peace they couldn't give you was waiting in solitude, in stillness, in rediscovering yourself, without their shadow hovering over your worth. And that discovery will transform you. You'll stop craving validation from those who can't see you and start valuing the serenity that comes from being authentically alone. Because it's in solitude that you learn your own frequency. It's in silence that you remember the sound of your own truth. And once you know that, you'll never settle for less again. They'll feel it too, this evolution of yours. Even if you never speak again, they'll sense it. Energy doesn't lie. When you heal, When you rise, when you glow from a place of wholeness, it radiates beyond words. It reaches them in subtle ways, a dream, a memory, a song that suddenly feels heavier than it used to. That's how life balances things. You carry peace, they carry regret. You move on lighter, they remain anchored to the past. You become the living proof of what they lost, and that realization follows them quietly, relentlessly, like a shadow that doesn't disappear when the sun sets. And yet, your heart must remain soft. Don't let their blindness harden you. Don't let disappointment turn you bitter. The danger of pain is that it tempts you to shut down, to become cold, detached, unreachable. But the real victory lies in staying open, not to them, but to life itself. Because every time you love deeply, even if it ends in loss, you expand. Your capacity for empathy grows. Your wisdom deepens. Your spirit becomes more luminous. The world doesn't need more guarded people. It needs more genuine ones. And the genuine are forged in heartbreak, not comfort. They're made through the fire of loss, the discipline of letting go, and the courage to still believe in goodness despite what was taken from them. The ones who hurt you may never apologize, and they may never understand the magnitude of what they did. But that's not your burden to carry. The apology you need will come from yourself, the part of you that stayed too long, that tolerated too much, that tried too hard. When you forgive that part, when you look at your reflection and say, I did my best with what I knew, you begin to release the emotional debt. And that release is freedom. You no longer need closure from them because you've closed the door yourself, gently but firmly. And once that door is closed, no force on earth can reopen it without your permission. They'll come to that door one day, perhaps not physically, but in spirit. They'll remember your laughter, your words, your eyes that once saw potential in them when no one else did. They'll reach for that memory like someone reaching for light in darkness. But it will be too late. The version of you that once waited, once hoped, once believed, they no longer exist. You've evolved beyond recognition. You've become someone new, stronger, wiser, peaceful. They'll recognize the face but not the energy. Because growth changes frequency, and they're still tuned to the past. That's the cruelty of consequence. They'll remember you as you were, but you'll exist in a reality they can no longer access. And while they wrestle with ghosts, you will build a life anchored in truth. You'll draw to you people who see your worth without needing to lose you first. People who won't confuse your kindness for weakness or your boundaries for arrogance. People who meet your energy with gratitude instead of entitlement. Those are your people, the ones who make your soul exhale. And you'll wonder why you ever fought so hard to be seen by those who were spiritually blind. You'll realize that the love you once begged for wasn't too much, it was just misplaced. You were offering it to hearts that couldn't hold it. This is the paradox of life. Sometimes you have to lose what you love to learn what love truly is. Sometimes you have to walk through the valley of rejection to understand the mountain of self-worth. Sometimes the ones who break you are the same, ones who build your strength. And while it's tempting to curse them, you begin to see that even their failure served a purpose. They were the chisels that shaped you into who you are now. Their absence carved space for something sacred, self-respect, clarity, divine timing. And when you reach that level of awareness, resentment fades. You stop needing revenge because you see that their curse is built into the natural order of life. You don't have to wish it on them. It's already unfolding. They'll live in the shadow of what they didn't honor, while you live in the light of what you became because of it. There will come a day when you'll see them again, perhaps by chance, and they'll smile that familiar smile. But something will have shifted. You won't feel anger or longing, just calm. You'll recognize the chapter they represent, but you won't wish to reopen it. You'll see that you're no longer the person who once tried to save them, and they're no longer capable of meeting you where you are. They'll feel that difference too, the distance not in miles, but in growth. And in that moment, they'll understand without words that they lost not just a person, but a destiny intertwined with your presence. It's a silent revelation that echoes long after the encounter ends. Life has a way of balancing emotional economies. What you give away without return eventually comes back through other means. It might arrive in peace, in purpose, in people who pour into you the way you once poured into others. The energy never disappears. It transforms. Every tear you shed watered your own evolution. Every disappointment redirected you to something higher. And every ending prepared you for a beginning that wouldn't require you to beg for understanding. You start to see that the pain was never punishment, it was preparation. When you operate from that awareness, your energy becomes different. You no longer cling to what's fading. You no longer chase what runs. You learn to trust that what's meant for you cannot mistake you. That's the mark of someone who's healed, not that they no longer feel, but that they no longer fear. They no longer fear loss because they've learned that nothing real is ever truly lost. It only changes form. You are the living proof of that transformation. You became the lesson they didn't want but needed, and the blessing you didn't know you could be. And though they'll spend years trying to fill the space you once occupied, they'll come to understand that some absences echo louder than any presence. That's the lesson they'll never escape. But for you, there's peace ahead, peace that doesn't depend on recognition, peace that doesn't crumble when others fail to see your worth. It's the peace that comes from knowing that you were enough all along. You didn't lose because they left, you didn't fail because they couldn't stay, you simply grew beyond their capacity to understand you. And while they linger in the shadows of what could have been, you will walk freely in the light of what is. Because they'll never find another you, and that's their curse forever. But your blessing is that you no longer need them to. And maybe in the quiet spaces of your soul, you'll feel a faint compassion for them, not the kind that wishes to return, but the kind that understands. You'll see that they couldn't love you properly because they hadn't yet learned to love themselves. You'll understand that they hurt you not because you were unworthy, but because they were unready, and that understanding will free you completely. You'll stop identifying with the pain and start identifying with the power that grew from it. You'll stop replaying what happened and start embracing what's ahead. That's the final transformation, not forgetting but transcending. You become the light that once sought you, and from that place, nothing and no one can take your peace again. And so, when you finally come to understand that they'll never find another you, you stop seeking validation from the blind and approval from the ungrateful. You begin to see that your worth was never diminished by their inability to recognize it. It was revealed by their loss. You walk differently when you know that your presence was not ordinary. You love differently when you realize that your love was rare, sacred, and deeply transformative. You forgive not because they deserve peace, but because you deserve freedom. You let them live with the echo of your absence, with the quiet realization that no matter who they meet, who they chase, or what they try to fill the void with, there will always be something missing. You were the irreplaceable lesson in their story, the soul they will never fully recover from. And that is not your burden, that is your gift. The gift of having been real in a world addicted to imitation. The gift of having loved with depth in a time when most people only touched the surface. The gift of having stood firm when others were too afraid to be authentic. You don't need to prove your worth anymore. You embody it. You don't need to chase love anymore. You attract it by living in truth. So let them wander, searching for reflections of you in faces that will never mirror your spirit. Let them keep trying to recreate what can't be recreated, because their curse is not losing you. Their curse is realizing too late that they never truly knew you, and your victory is not revenge, it's peace. Peace in knowing that the world may forget many things, but it will never forget the energy of a soul like yours.